But with no further ado, I'd love to introduce Dr. Justin Allen. He is the urgent care clinical manager at Tembo Health and a board certified emergency physician. He has practiced in a variety of hospitals ranging from urban cities to rural communities, academic institutions to freestanding hospitals for over 13 years. He's well suited to ensure that patients not only get the urgent care they need, but also the holistic care that they deserve. And as an emergency physician, he's cared for every age, especially seniors, in almost every specialty. We're thrilled to have him here. He's earned his medical degree at the University of Oklahoma, completed his residency at Mount Sinai Beth Israel Medical Center in New York, and he was the chief resident. So he has some amazing credentials. I'm sure there's so much more beyond that. So with no further ado, Dr. Allen, everyone.
Hello, hi, thank you. All right, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen so you can see my slides. Okay, can you see my slides? Fantastic. Okay, thank you, Lauren. All right, so good afternoon, everybody. On behalf of Tembo Health, it's my pleasure to be here. As Lauren mentioned, my name is Dr. Allen. I have been an emergency room physician for 13 years. I was a former assistant professor at Cornell. Currently, I'm the medical director at Tembo Health. Here at Tembo Health, we are reimagining healthcare for seniors. We offer comprehensive telehealth services for residents of senior living communities through 24/7 urgent care, wellness management, and much more. So in honor of Stress Awareness Month, today I will be discussing caregiver stress, what it is and how to manage it. We will have a question and answer session at the end of the talk, so please submit any questions through the chat or hold on to them until the end of the presentation. All right. I want to first just share with you my own story of a loved one managing stress with caregiving. When my grandmother was diagnosed with dementia, my mother became her caregiver. A quick background to my mother: she was a nurse with about 30 years experience. She loved to care for people, which is why she felt she would be an ideal person to be the caregiver for my grandmother. She started off helping my grandmother with just minor tasks such as going to the doctor's office, picking up prescriptions, organizing her schedule, typically just running around, doing a few errands here and there. She was still able to maintain her full job as a nurse during this time, but soon she realized that she was being pulled more and more from her job to help with doctor's appointments, unexpected emergencies, and even typical day-to-day tasks like cooking and cleaning. She realized she wasn't able to work full-time and continue to care for my grandmother, so she had to leave her job. Because she loved that job, it was a tough decision, but for her, it was well worth it knowing that she could focus on helping my grandmother. As time went on, my mother realized she was being asked to do more and more. She never wanted to burden my dad or myself, so we never actually even really knew how overwhelming this was for her. Looking back today, she still is glad she was able to do that. She just really wishes she knew what she was signing up for, so that way she would have been a little bit more prepared. She would have asked for more help. She would have asked for more information about what it means to be a caregiver. She had an idea of what tasks she would be doing, but she had no idea that there would be so many stressors to deal with, some even being mental stress. So coming up, I will go into detail about some of the common stressors she encountered. Today, I want to help you understand some of those issues and how we can prevent or manage them. So first off, I just want to explain what stress is. So we hear about stress all the time on the news, but what is it really? Stress is a physiological response to a stressor. This is instinctual. It's buried in our DNA. It allows us to survive. And what do I mean by that? Well, let's take, for example, a caveman taking a trip to the river for water. All of a sudden, a tiger jumps out in his path. And at this moment, he is being presented with a stressor, this tiger. He has an instinctual need to survive this moment. And this is where nature kicks in by inducing stress. So you've all heard about the body's natural fight or flight response, but what is it really? When you experience stress, a number of things happen within your body, all of it triggered by this adrenaline rush. Your heart starts to beat faster and harder, which improves blood flow to your muscles and brain in preparation to escape or fight. Your lungs are breathing faster, you're hyperventilating. This improves oxygen intake. You're expelling carbon dioxide so muscles can function at a higher output. Your eyes dilate, improving your visual field. You can see all the escape routes and threats coming at you. This is all instigated by your adrenal gland. This is the adrenaline rush, and that's where it comes from. And it triggers all the above responses. It also even shuts off certain parts, certain functions in your body. For instance, it shuts off your body's ability to fight infections. That pneumonia that your body was dealing with, no longer important in this scenario. So your body, your adrenaline glands shuts off the ability to fight that infection. It even shuts down parts of your body that help maintain your health. So you might have experienced something like this, that sinking feeling in your gut, like when you misplaced your wallet or you thought you lost your keys and you just feel your gut just sink down. Well, that's actually stress. That's blood being diverted away from your stomach because absorbing nutrients in that moment is not as important as receiving blood to your muscles and brain. This is all just a normal response to stress. But when is it abnormal? Well, something that can come from stress is anxiety. So what is anxiety? Anxiety, it's a perpetual state of stress without a stressor. So believe it or not, anxiety can actually be a good thing. Let's go back to that caveman, for example. Now, he just survived his encounter the other day, but he still needs to go to that same river today. It would be helpful to him to be a little bit more cautious when walking along that path. So this time he starts to notice that his body is now feeling this anxious state because he learned that he may need to flee once again. So we have moments of this anxiety every day too. Examples include maybe hearing some stressful news, dealing with some stressful event. The thought of that stress can linger with us. This keeps us in a heightened state. However, we are not dealing with any obvious threats, which is why stress and anxiety can be harmful to us when it just doesn't go away. So why do we need to worry about stress if it's so instinctual and it's something that helps us? So why we need to worry is because you can't always be in a state of stress. When you are always in that state, it's like flooring the gas pedal every time you drive and then just slamming on the brakes when you want to stop. We're not built to handle this on a day-to-day basis. It's just this constant adrenaline rush. This actually can have physical and mental tolls on the body. It's been linked to the top 10 causes of death. It even has an economic toll on our society. Every year, business loses around $300 billion from effects of stress on its employees. So how does stress tie into being a caregiver, and why is it different from everyday stress? Well, what do I mean when I say a caregiver? Well, a caregiver in this setting is typically unpaid. Usually you are unexpectedly placed into this role. It's not like you were told you would be taking on this responsibility. You weren't given a chance to plan your life. It can happen overnight, like when a loved one suffers a stroke, or even just a simple fall resulting in a broken hip. Typically, a caregiver is a direct family member like a son or a daughter or a sibling, and even sometimes it's even the parent. 1 in 3 caregivers have no background in healthcare, and 60% of caregivers maintain a full-time job outside of their caregiver role. You may not even consider yourself a caregiver. You may look at it as something you're just expected to do, a role you didn't choose, but yet you assume you need to fill. So here are some unique stressors associated with being a caregiver. Uncertainty is one of them. You have no idea how long this will go on for or how fast it will progress. Despite all of our knowledge with medicine, even as clinicians, we don't even have all the answers. Like for instance, with dementia, there's no way to give you a specific expectation. It would be a lot easier if you knew that in 2 months, you will need to figure out a way to cook all the meals. Or in 4 months, you should start planning for that prolonged hospital stay. Unfortunately, we don't have those answers. And it is all those possibilities that race through your mind that can lead to anxiety. For instance, my mother took on this role not realizing that this would be something part of her life for the next 2 years. So a lack of knowledge and understanding is a big stressor. This goes back to most caregivers do not have a background in healthcare. How are you supposed to know if you're dealing with an emergency? Or is this just a normal part of the illness? Even for someone like my mother with her experiences being a nurse, she quickly realized that there are so many complex issues that she just wasn't aware of. You're dealing with this constant pressure of always being on call. This isn't a role where you have set hours. You can't just clock in and clock out. You always feel available in case of emergencies. You may even find it hard to sleep at night because you're constantly worried that you could get a call at any time. There's a change in family dynamics. Family dynamics and roles are challenged during this time. You tend to take on a parental role. Sometimes this new dynamic can be frustrating for your loved one. They may find it difficult to be told what to do. Unexpected arguments may arise, and they may be struggling with going from full independence to relying on you for even the most simple of tasks. And of course, there's financial challenges that go along with this. There's an increase in medical costs. Maybe you need to purchase equipment for the house. Along with expected increase in monthly expenses, you may even be dealing with the loss of income. My mother ended up having to quit her job. It was tough to deal with, but we managed. Some people may not have that luxury. They may not be able to pick up extra shifts, work a second job, things like that to help make ends meet. So they can struggle with that. Then there's even things like jealousy from family members who may now feel like they're being ignored. It's hard to imagine someone being jealous that you're giving your time to a caregiver, but some people may not understand what you're doing. You might have young children that cannot comprehend the sacrifice you are making. They just see it as you not being around. My mother ended up spending a majority of her time with her grandmother, and she practically lived there for the last year. My father understood this was necessary, but that doesn't mean it wasn't difficult for him not to see his wife. So there's also an isolation and loneliness that goes along with this. As you dive deeper into this role as a caregiver, it is easy to ignore normal activities. You no longer participate in group activities with friends. You have to cancel vacations. You avoid hobbies. But yet, ironically enough, you might feel isolated, but yet you still never feel alone. You're always around. You're always needing to be able to take care of that person. So you might be cut off from the other world, but then you're just never alone at home. There's even a physical toll that can go along with this. You may be required to perform very physical tasks from time to time, even at risk of hurting yourself sometimes. For instance, your loved one falls on the ground and you want to help them up. As an emergency physician, I've seen this many times come into the emergency room where I'll see both family members come in through the ambulance. One because they fell and the other because they injured their back trying to help that person getting up. Another thing to consider is your own health and well-being. While you are busy managing appointments for your loved one, you might be missing your own, failing to make that appointment or canceling appointments. Ignoring your own health can make it even harder for you to care for someone else. Remember, you can't care for someone if your own medical issue forces you into the hospital. So how can you tell if you're dealing with this unhealthy anxiety? Well, you may find yourself feeling constantly overwhelmed or worried, sleeping too much or too little. You feel your mind racing at night. You're unexpectedly gaining or losing weight. Even chronic pain can be the result of stress and anxiety. Unfortunately, too often people seek solace through alcohol, prescription, or illicit drugs. And just because you're prescribed a medication doesn't mean you can't abuse it. So now that we know what stress is and how to recognize it, the next question is, what can we do about it? So managing caregiver stress is crucial, not only for your loved one, but also for you. Some common ways to manage caregiver stress includes being proactive and plan ahead. So talk with your loved one about their expectations. What do they expect you to do? You may feel like you're expected to take on certain roles or responsibilities, but if you talk it out with the person you're caring for in your family, you may realize that they are wanting to help out, as well as they just didn't know what they could do. Talk with a lawyer about being a power of attorney. That way you can help to make medical decisions, financial decisions when they arise. And have a plan with your family about identifying backup care in case of emergencies when they come up. Another big help is to get organized. Create a schedule and adhere to it. Organizations and being organized in habits can actually help to reduce stress and anxiety. Have a set schedule for doctor's appointments, keep medication lists handy, and set boundaries for grocery shoppings and outings. This is very important, especially if you want to maintain a full-time job during this too as well. And don't be afraid to seek out and accept support. Ask for help when you need it. You can find community resources and support groups. On the next slide, I will include some of these great resources. You can talk to your family. Like I mentioned before, they may not be stepping up to help because you make it seem like they don't need to, like you have it all together, and they just don't know where they can fit. They want to help out. Sometimes they may just feel like they're just going to get in the way. But as soon as you reach out to them and you tell them about what you're going through and the stress that you're dealing with, you might find that there's an overwhelming amount of support that comes from them. They might have been eager to help. They were just afraid that they were going to get in the way. So another thing is ask questions and leverage your existing doctors. You can learn more about care and conditions by doing this, and don't be afraid to ask questions to help you better understand the situation. Before you go to any doctor's appointments, I recommend writing down all the questions that you were wanting to ask the doctor during that time. It's very easy to get caught up in that appointment, getting new information from your doctor, getting told what they feel like you should do, but you might completely lose out on that time to ask those questions or forget even what questions you wanted to ask. So it's helpful to have that little piece of paper to really go back to in order to make sure that you're asking those important questions. Ask your doctor if he has ways to reach him or her through, say, email or text. And some even have some online portals where you can interact back and forth with them with certain questions and updates too as well. Be sure to prioritize yourself and take care of your health. By that, I mean, socialize with other people, whether or not that's visiting people, then visiting you, phone calls or emails. Do activities that bring you joy. Make sure you get time to sleep. Stay active and exercise when you can. Go outside when you're able to. And try to eat well and avoid harmful habits like tobacco, alcohol, and drugs. And don't forget to see your doctor regularly. Don't cancel your appointments. All too often, I've seen people come into the emergency room with a serious condition, one that easily could have been avoided had they just maintained those doctor's appointments, kept up with their medications. And then sadly, a lot of these people end up leaving the hospital early because they don't feel that they can stay in the hospital any longer. They have someone they have to get home to care for. I try to understand and I do recognize their struggle, but I tell them that if they can't even be away for just one night, what's going to happen when they end up in the hospital for weeks because they ignored this medical condition? Another thing is to recognize a high stress situation and find a way to step away. Whether you just leave the room or you ask a family member or a friend just to come over so you can step away. These are moments where maybe you're just feeling overwhelmed and burdened. Something's going on, too many noises are happening, and you can just feel that inside of you. It's just better just to take a moment, step away, and then ask someone to take over for that short time. With that being said, even you can consider offloading responsibilities not directly related to caregiving. Especially nowadays with our technology, it's easy to hire cleaning services to come in each week. You can sign up for subscription meal services, take the load off of having to cook a meal every day. Some of these great sites like Freshly, Vestro, Fresh and Lean are some good sources. You can also use technology to help reduce burdens like transportation. You can even consider using technology for your medical needs too as well. Consider telemedicine services to avoid struggles of transporting to the doctor's office or hospital. See if your doctor has that option for these visits. Here at Tembo Health, we use telemedicine to provide urgent care to seniors at facilities like Belmont. Through something as simple as a camera, you're able to have an immediate access to an emergency medicine doctor. And being emergency medicine doctors, we're all equipped to evaluate to see if you or your loved one is dealing with an emergency. And if so, we can help to expedite that care. And if it's not an emergency, we can offer in-home tests, treatments, x-rays, send medications to your doorstep. That's just the great thing about technology, how we've kind of just escalated that care in medicine. Another good option is to seek out programs with something called respite care and FMLA. If you're not familiar with FMLA and you're working full-time, it's the Family Medical Leave Act. It lets you, as long as you're working outside of your home, and you've been working for your job for over a year, you'd be eligible for up to 12 weeks of unpaid leave per year. That doesn't mean you have to take that leave all at once. You don't even have to take it in groups. You can just take it as day-to-day. So if you need to make an appointment to see a doctor, you can use that to go make that appointment. Or you can take it in groups. Let's say you have an unexpected injury. You broke your arm or something else happened, and now you can't just do the normal activities of the day. This can kind of help out with those situations. Or you can even just take off like a week. Like let's say your loved one just came home from the hospital and they're still a little bit weak, as always, most people are after coming home from the hospital, but they're likely going to turn around in about a week or two, get their strength back, but they just need you around to really help out during that short period of time. You can use your FMLA to really help out with that situation. Another option could be respite care. Respite care is something that local facilities like Belmont can offer, like these temporary short stays. This is perfect if you need to go on a vacation, or going back to that moment, like if you injured yourself and you just need that little bit of time to heal up, and then you can get back to being the caregiver yourself. And finally, know your limits. It's noble of you to try to take on this role and responsibility of your loved one. You might feel you can do this all yourself, and maybe in the beginning you even can, but that doesn't mean you should. There will come a point when you're just not enough. And that's why it's important to find resources that we've talked about. Again, I'll include some of these resources in the next slide. The resources like Belmont, they can be a great tool for safe and reliable care. Reaching out to places like this who are skilled and knowledgeable to take on the role of being a caregiver allows you to relieve yourself of that stress. Now that you've let someone else take over that day-to-day problem, you can just focus on just being there for just love and support, which is the role that you are actually best equipped to do. So before I get to the last slide, I did want to just kind of talk about a different type of caregiver stress. So this is actually stress on the person you're caring for. So this is a unique form of stress associated with caregiving. So while you're experiencing stress, oftentimes your loved one is experiencing their own form of stress. This is a common condition called relocation stress syndrome. It is when an individual moves from one environment to another. And that doesn't mean a physical environment all the time, doesn't mean a relocation. It can even just be a mental situational change. So for example, financially, they're thinking about how am I going to pay for it all? You know, how do I manage my assets? Was I financially able to retire? Sometimes it is a change in the professional environment. Like when you go from working full-time to retiring, you no longer have that sense of importance that comes from being needed in the workplace. Your relationships and social connections can change, which can also happen when you leave a job or when you move to a different home. And there can be some physical changes involved, loss of mobility, diminished cognitive response. Basically, you feel like you're just, not able to remember things as well. And they may be dealing with frustration from a loss of freedom and independence. For example, having your driver's license taken away from you, and you're no longer able to perform those daily activities without the reliance on someone else. And now you're also dealing with more doctor's appointments, more tasks, more things on your schedule, more medications, all can be overwhelming and stressful too. We've actually seen a lot of patients like this through Tembo Health, through our phone calls, for these exact moments of dealing with anxiety and signs of depression when they move away from their homes. So it's important to have resources, having access to doctors, to mental health professionals And telemedicine could be a big help for that too as well. So some resources that you can seek out. AARP can be a big help. Alzheimer's Association, A Place for Mom, Caregiver Action. These are great resources that can really help out in these times of needs. And then we have access on our websites to some of these resources too as well. All right, well, I thank you all for giving me that time and wanted to see if you guys have any questions that I can hopefully help to answer.
Hello, Dr. Allen. We thank you so much for some really great information during your presentation, and we've got some really good questions. First, one of the questions we got was, what questions should I ask my doctor or my loved one's doctor? So general questions to ask a physician about a loved one that needs care.
Yeah, that's a great question. And again, that goes back to that idea that it's very important to write these down because, again, you get into that moment. That's something that my mom taught me, which was huge. And I take to me this day as well, is to make sure that you write that down. So a big part is, again, I talked about the idea that we don't always know the answers, even as medical professionals, but at least try to see what to expect. They can at least give you an idea of especially when there's been big changes about what you're going to need to be doing at home and what kind of care you're going to need to provide. Because you might go home and realize that there's a lot of obstacles in your house. You know, if there's something that kind of causes a little bit of some weakness, next thing you know, that rug on the floor or even the pets in the household, they can be a danger. So you need to be aware of those potential issues. So even though they can't tell you maybe exactly the course of the disease that you're expecting in the future, they can at least tell you from their experience what to do at home. So ask them if there's anything that you need to be aware of when you go home. And also ask them about these medications too. A lot of times, especially if you have multiple doctors, you might be seeing that one doctor is prescribing one medication and you really hope that they are fully aware of what other medications you're taking. But a lot of times these specialists are just focused on that part of the body that they deal with. And so use your primary care doctor to help to manage all those medications because some of them might be interacting. Maybe it's a necessary thing that you have to deal with, but at least now you know that when you take this medication, you might have to watch out that you're going to stand up and get dizzy and maybe fall over. So some things like that could be very useful. So seek out the use of your primary care doctor as the centralized resource to kind of help to navigate all your medical issues during that time. But again, biggest thing is write down your questions and bring that to the appointment because that's you.
That's great information and great advice. Another question we got was how to talk about stress with your physician.
Yeah, that's a good question too as well. It can be hard to bring that up sometimes. I think it's simply just let them know that you are feeling overwhelmed in that setting. It doesn't mean that you have to seek out mental health resources, though that can be a big, huge benefit too as well. Not just for the fact of asking for any kind of pharmacological benefits, but really just being able to talk to someone about that. So talk to your doctor. And again, when you talk these things out, maybe they'll kind of run over why these events are stressful for you, and they can also help to manage that too as well. Again, they've experienced these moments quite often with a majority of their patients, and they can sit there and recommend or refer you to certain resources in this setting too as well. So it is important to bring that up with your doctor. Just basically just explain to them why you feel stressed. It might be hard to put that into words, but if you can try to, they can maybe find out exactly what it is that's causing that stress, and then they can focus on relieving that.
Absolutely. You know, one of the questions we got is a good point about like, what if you can't afford to take time off of work to be able to, whether it's go to the doctor's office or, you know, providing care for a loved one. Any thoughts on resources?
Yeah,
Kind of
that's,
general. Yeah.
yeah, that can be a very difficult situation to be in. Unfortunately, there are some people that just cannot afford any time off whatsoever. I mean, there are those options of being able to use like FMLA. Unfortunately, that is unpaid, but it still allows you. I mean, the nice thing is this is a federal mandated uh, point with your job that they have to let you off in order to take care of this loved one. I know there's certain states that I believe actually offer payments or to be a caregiver. I'm not sure the exact like details of that, but I think that there's certain places that you can actually receive payments being that caregiver itself. But again, I think the FMLA is a huge part. It's unpaid, but it at least allows you to go beyond and not have to take like vacation days and things like that. And you can reserve that for other times, and you can take that time off in order to help your loved one.
That's great. What are some signs that your body might be dealing with stress or burnout?
Yeah, so the biggest part is what most people would kind of link to maybe a little bit of depression. Um, so you find yourself basically just losing all interest in activities. You're having a hard time struggling with like sleeping. That's a big part. You're just sleeping a lot, maybe a little. Um, you don't feel like you can shut your mind off. That can be tough too as well. That's a big part, is that you're just basically racing through all the possibilities and all the realms. But the big part is that I tell people is really just as soon as you find yourself just uninterested in things that used to bring you joy, bring you happiness, that's a big part right there. And along with that, if you find yourself being quick to basically get angry or get upset, and maybe after the moment and after the event, you just kind of wonder why did that bother me so much? That could be a good example of you just being dealing with burnout. You're just being overwhelmed. So even just a small amount of trigger can be huge and explode.
Yes, absolutely. And the last question we have is from a senior, actually. How do I, as a senior, assist my caregiver in avoiding extra stress? As I age, my caregiver's responsibilities will increase.
Yeah, that's a great question. So that's really nice. You're looking out for your caregiver, which is the point of
So
this
sweet.
discussion. I think the biggest thing is just talk to that caregiver. Basically, if you kind of sit down and you go over what's needed on a day-to-day basis, again, having things like a calendar and planning things out can be helpful, because the problem when you don't communicate is that one person may feel that they just need to take on all that roles and responsibility themselves. Like they just assume I got to call everybody. I need to find out how you're going to get this. And these are tasks that maybe you can help out to as well. You just don't even know that they're available to take on. And again, it goes back to there could be other friends and family member that are just lying in the wait, ready to help you out. They just have no idea what roles that they can play, because they just sometimes you just seem like you got it all together. You try to make it look that way. I know that's how my mother was. She totally made it seem like she just was on top of it all. And you just feel like, all right, well, how can I help without basically completely just being a lead weight to everything that you're doing? So I think for that, so talk to your caregiver and just kind of have that discussion on what they're doing and what roles you can take on yourself. And that way they don't assume that they just need to automatically take on that responsibility.
That's great advice. Thank you so much, Dr. Allen. At this point, do you have anything else you want to share with us before we pass it off to Susan?
I think that's for the most part. We just kind of summarize once again. Just again, stress is a huge component just of our everyday lives. We all deal with it. And when I say stress, unfortunately, like going back, like I kind of tried to explain what stress is, but when I say stress, it's like anxiety. It just kind of melds into the same thing. But that is just, there's a huge impact on all of us. And being a caregiver is just a very unique and different type of stress. And so it's important just to recognize moments that can be stressful, using resources when you can. That's a big part. Just don't take it all on yourselves. And the biggest thing that I've ever seen is, and the saddest part is just the people who have put so much of a burden on themselves that they ignore their own health. And I hate seeing someone come into the emergency room. So many times someone's actively having a heart attack. I give them, I get them better, but then 2 hours later, they are going home because they felt they had that need to take care of that other person. And I constantly tell them, well, if you go home and you have another heart attack and God forbid something terrible happens to you, well, then what are you going to do? So it's that idea that you need to make sure that if you're helping someone else in their health, you also need to focus on your own.
Put your own airbag on first.
Yeah.
That's it. Well, Dr. Allen, thank you so much for all of your insight and knowledge today. I am certain that everyone on the webinar enjoyed it as much as I did. I'm going to now turn it over to Susan Berger to say a few words about Belmont Village, talk about the services that we have available to help prevent family burnout by potentially moving a loved one, and a little bit about potentially our Tembo Health program that we've rolled out that Dr. Allen oversees. So I encourage you to stay on for another minute or two to learn a little bit more from Susan. So take it away, Susan.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Allen. When we speak about stress, we have to think about the older adults too, and try to understand how they embrace changes in their life and how they face the many challenges that come with aging. Most seniors enjoy their independence and the control that they have over their lives. And as Dr. Allen said, this loss of independence can also include a loss of personal health, family and friends, not to mention loss of their home. All of these changes can be a source of stress and can affect both physical and mental health. What older adults really need is not tangible. It's a deeper sense of purpose and belonging. And what COVID has shown all of us is the need for socialization. This applies not only to seniors, but to their caregivers as well. At Belmont Village, we strive to support our residents' sense of purpose, promote socialization, and enhance quality of life. We know that every one of our residents has a story to tell, and we seek to understand the things that are most important to them. We strive to learn about their past, their professional life, their personal challenges, what causes them stress, as well as their hopes for the future. For 25 years, Belmont Village has owned and operated best-in-class, fully licensed senior living communities. We're founded on the belief that all seniors deserve to live self-directed lives in a supportive community, filled with new friendships and interests, safety and security, quality and value, and above all, a place that they call home. And at Belmont, it's all about quality of life. It's about health, energy, and purpose. We want all of our residents to stay healthy and active, and in doing so, to live well. And our goal every day for every resident is to support this healthy lifestyle and to reduce their level of stress. We know that what you eat and drink, how much you exercise, and the way you socialize are all equally important to successful aging. As we are all unique, we believe in a person-centered approach that provides our services to the residents, and they receive help with activities of daily living as needed. And although their needs may vary, all residents can count on our caring and compassionate staff committed to providing high quality, person-centered care. But they can also count on our Belmont Village nurses. They're trained medical professionals who are dedicated to serve the healthcare needs of each resident. And they're keen observers. They can quickly assess changes in residents' health. And most importantly, they're there 24 hours a day to provide peace of mind for the residents and their families. But we also know that successful aging involves staying active. Whether our residents want to kickstart their day with group fitness or one-on-one exercise, our goal is to help stimulate both their minds and body at whatever level they feel successful. And what better way to stay physically engaged than under the watchful eyes of our team of licensed physical therapists. I receive so many calls every day due to cognitive decline, and to specifically address the needs and abilities of residents with mild cognitive impairment, Belmont Village has pioneered a comprehensive therapeutic program that we call our Circle of Friends. This is person-centered, absolutely a whole brain fitness lifestyle, one that will combine our highly regarded wellness model with mental fitness. And it has proven to have a profound impact on addressing the needs and abilities of residents with early stage memory loss, so that they can have the just right challenge. They can stay involved every day, build confidence, and be happy with fulfilled days. And this innovative approach to memory care has changed how providers and families now think about assisted living and memory care support. I'm so proud that Belmont Village has communities all across the United States and Mexico